segue into our final region. It was the West, obviously. The UConn Huskies at 29-8. They win the West. And folks, it was not even close. UConn dominated throughout the tournament in their 4 games. They've averaged a combined, or excuse me, an average of 22.5 points differential. So they've just dominated. They haven't had to deal with adversity. They haven't had to deal with really a close game. And also something that I saw was pretty interesting heading into, of course, the Final Four. They are the heavy, heavy favorites to win the national title. They are minus 125. SDSU is plus 390. Miami plus 500, and FAU plus 600. Obviously, different betting sites will have different, but you're going to see the UConn Huskies as the heavy, heavy favorite heading into the Final Four. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the West region?
Let me start with this. America, hear me out. If you've been listening to the podcast, we're some 50 minutes into it, little over 50 minutes. But my brothers orchestrated this thing so that we would talk about the West last, and I could just sit here and lament and stew and hold my emotions, fight back tears, rend my garments even. Oh, let's wrap up the segment with Jim talking about Gonzaga. Wow, guys. Wow. What can I say? All kidding aside, I will tell you what, my son was in the house at T-Mobile for that game on Saturday. He sent me a text, and his first text was, UConn is huge, and they haven't missed a shot yet during warmups. Next text I got from him said, I'll tell you this, whoever wins this game is going to be the national champion. He didn't say Zags are going to win, UConn's going to, he just said, of the 2 teams, whoever wins this one, there's your national champion. And I go with that. I mean, UConn just a dynamo. What a dynamo. And as I text to you guys over the weekend, you get your ass beat, you get your ass beat. So all you can do is go forward, keep your head up. Did you try your best? Maybe you didn't, maybe the shots weren't falling for you. Fine, fine, fine. But it's not, nobody stole the game from you. It's nobody else's fault. You got beat. So Gonzaga got beat. And I think that was Coach Few and Drew Timmies and the rest of the guys. That was their approach. Not easy to accept. But overall, the West, another one, Kansas. Kansas doesn't get out of that second round. The number 1 teams just didn't have it this year. Kind of makes you scratch your head and look at the committee and go, yeah, you guys were really good this year, weren't you? I mean, none of those number 1 seeds were doing much of anything. UConn handled the West Coast Conference, though, because before they beat up on Gonzaga, they beat up on Coach Bennett's kids and got rid of St. Mary's. UCLA played a great game, and I think that took a lot out of Gonzaga, that game against UCLA. I think they were just tired. Think about how fresh these UConn players must have felt by the time they stepped on the floor. It was all warm up for them, those first 3 games. And I mean that, but I know they still had to try and put forth effort. But wow. But in general, the West, what a great showing by all the teams. As far as Gonzaga, I will have to make the statement, you know what? They weren't supposed to win the conference. They weren't supposed to win the West Coast Conference. They weren't supposed to challenge for first place. They weren't supposed to get out of the first or second round. And for them to get all the way to the Elite Eight speaks a lot about the character of Coach Few, Drew Timmy, and those guys out there. I'm still proud of the Zags, but I really think my son was right. Watch for UConn.
Yeah, I also want to thank you, Raider Jim, for giving me enough credit to think that I'm smart enough to look that far ahead and think that I put that together diabolically. I'll put my hand up and say I definitely put the South region first for my own personal want of San Diego State, but I guess when it was all said and done, it did shake out that way. Do apologize. Hopefully the garments are still okay in the Martinez household. But yeah, once again, thank you for giving me the benefit of the brain doubt there. But trust me, I could barely think that just typing these days is tough for me upstairs.
At
So
2 minutes and 30 seconds left in the game, I sent a text to one of my buddies who went to San Diego State, and I said, I think it's mathematically impossible now.
yeah. Yeah, it would take it would take about a what, 2 10-point shots, and we're still gonna be a little dicey towards the end, but it was unfortunate, but, for UConn, wow, what a run through that tournament, very, very impressive, or through that bracket, I should say, very impressive, and also, UConn going probably I don't know the exact numbers on it, but they did some traveling. If you're in Connecticut and
True.
you're going to Vegas, that's a hefty flight there. So they weren't handed a whole lot in terms of that from the committee. But Coach, what are your thoughts on the West Regional?
Yeah, UConn. I mean, we've spoke about them all season long, coming out of that Big East. Before Raider Jim popped on and caught us, kind of like, "Hey, let's make him go last."
Plotting.
Kind of
Plotting is the
plotting.
word.
Yeah,
Plotting.
yeah,
Look at that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We talked about how they didn't even finish top four in their conference. But I think we have all spoke on them talking about look at the bodies these guys have, look at the length these guys have, and then confirmation Raider Jim's son is just like these guys are big. Yeah, they're big. They got NBA mature bodies on them, and you know what? Yeah, they did walk into that Gonzaga game. Yeah, Gonzaga did have the fight, and that's just the breaks, I guess. You know,
It
and
is. Yeah.
yeah, it's just the breaks. I mean, uh, they're there now though. So UConn is there, and they got a tough matchup against Miami, a team that isn't going to be intimidated. Might not have the size to match up, but at this point, you know, let's not talk about name value for programs. Every school's here for a certain reason. Whether it's they all have the athleticism, they all could put the ball in the hoop, or they all could defend. These are the final four teams that are left, and that's what we got to work with. And UConn, rightfully so, made a very dominating run to the final four, and have kind of like quietly snuck in um, after not performing so hot in the Big East regular season and whatnot. So it's until we get there on Saturday, we don't know what to expect.
Hmm.
Maybe the ball doesn't drop like it did the last game. Maybe the depth of this gosh darn football stadium isn't going to let the shooters have a good backdrop. That's a huge thing to deal with. Maybe the spotlight of being in the Final Four is going to be too big. You know, they keep saying, "Oh, well, UConn's won the national title already." Not one of those kids have. Not that coaching staff has. So nobody knows where they're all going to come from and knows what to expect until that ball gets tipped and gets put through the hoop. So, you know, I think this is what we get as far as the Final Four goes. No true blue bloods. Um, this is what we get in a Final Four when there's NILs. This is what we get in a Final Four when the transfer portal is the wild, wild west, and it's going to be a sign to come moving forward. Uh, I, I I said it with the coaching carousel. Expect Patino and Cooley to have immediate success, just like these teams. Jim Behan crying about Miami buying their team. Look where they're at. Well, then the next thing is, yeah, they just bought their way into a Final Four. Well, that's what they did. And that's what teams got to do. That's what teams are starting to do more and more. So we have our Final Fours matched up, set for Saturday, and I just can't wait. I'm going to get myself an order of hot wings.
Mm.
I'm going to get myself some cola. I'm going to get myself ready to just sit down on my couch and watch a evening of college basketball so that I could share my thoughts with y'all after Monday. That's what I'm looking forward
Amen.
to.
Yeah, I don't know what rapper said it or whatever, but as they say, don't hate the player, hate the game. The rules are
There
there, and
you
if
go.
you take advantage of them and you're not cheating, hey, get mad at the rule maker, not the person who knows how to take advantage of them.
Exactly.
Period. Yeah, everyone has, I don't want to say a fair playing field, but everyone's working through the same rules.
Mhm.
And then the people that are doing it the right way, they're just doing it better than the others. It's period. That's all there is to it. It's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, I do think we'll see some tweaking going forward with NILs and transfer portals. It is a bit of a wild, wild west. I'd like to see a little more balance in that, but that's for another podcast. But we have